Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to History Channel. Today we'll ask you to travel with us back to 1917 to analyze the event that marked the official end of Imperial Russia and the beginning of the communist society that would soon be known as the Soviet Union, the October Revolution. But first things first, right? So before getting into the actual event, we should ask ourselves, what led to this revolution?
After the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and his cousin's decline of the throne, it was decided that the provisional government would inherit political authority over Russia in an attempt of gaining the people's confidence in the government. Unfortunately, and even though they had been particularly happy because of the end of Tsarism, their enthusiasm for the new provisional government did not last long as people started to realize things had not suffered any serious changes. Food was still lacking even at the country's capital. Most peasants had a hard time finding suitable jobs, and most importantly, people were starting to ask questions. Russia's involvement in World War I, many thought that the country should seek peace terms with Germany and withdraw the war. Pressures on Russia's economy and on the people would be eased, and more time, effort, and attention would be put in reforming and organizing the new way of government. However, the provisional government did not agree and stated that they should stay loyal to their allies and keep fighting for them.
People blamed the provisional government of intentionally keeping back promises of revolution and started considering them their enemy, and these ideas were strongly supported by the Soviet, an organization Tsar Nicholas had vanished in the past and that was now rising once again. In the months after Vladimir Lenin's return to Russia, more and more members had come around his beliefs that the revolution that would finally lead them to communism should happen as fast as possible. Now Bolsheviks held the majority of both St. Petrograd and Moscow Soviets, and were planning on rebelling before the elections regarding to the Constitutional Assembly were held, since this assembly would officially make Russia a republic.
Back at the Winter Palace, ministers of the provisional government had predicted an insurrection was coming. They also had intended to stop the Bolsheviks' influence in citizens by ordering to shut down Bolshevik newspapers and arrest Lenin and his fellow revolutionaries. The problem was, now that those soldiers who had worked for the imperial family had joined the people in the revolution, there was nobody there to carry these orders, and even though there had been, would it be enough to shut down the greatest ideas of communism the people had incorporated? Lenin had already convinced them they didn't need any rich man's democracy nor any other government but the Soviet of workers and soldiers, where they would get what they needed by their own work. With the number of Bolshevik supporters rapidly rising and the provisional government having no other protection than a single unit of female troops and a few untrained military cadets, revolution already seemed as something inevitable.
On October 24, 1917, the day Russia had been preparing for so long finally arrived. Throughout the day, Bolshevik-leaning soldiers had seized control of the electric power station and the main post office, as well as the main bridges and railroad stations. Most people did not notice such things were happening, but it was definitely enough to alert the ministers something even bigger and more dangerous was coming, and it certainly was. At 9 p.m., a ship operated by Bolshevik sailors slipped down the Nivia River and fired twice at the Winter Palace, where the provisional government was. Even though no damage was made, it was enough to terrify the minister's troops into instantly surrender and therefore leave the ministers enormously afraid of what was coming, since now they did not have any protection at all. At 2 a.m. on October 25, ministers agreed on surrendering as well. Now all power had passed instantly to the Soviets. Así fue como la idea de Rusia convertida en una república fue inmediatamente desvanecida. Ahora el pueblo de San Petersburgo esperaba con ansias el cumplimiento de aquellas promesas revolucionarias que se avecinaban con la llegada del comunismo. Buenos días. Siento no poder presentarme con un nombre específico como las personas como ustedes suelen hacerlo, pero pueden referirse a mí como la peregrina.
Y yo soy Caín. Ambos estamos aquí el día de hoy para comentar acerca de la Revolución de Octubre, ya que ambos tuvimos la oportunidad de estar en la ciudad de San Petersburgo en su momento. Yo buscando un trabajador que me diera un gran favor.
Y yo buscando una mujer la cual le había llegado la hora de dejar este mundo.
Por más que ahora parezca una idea mediocre, en su momento el futuro de Rusia finalmente se veía prometedor en manos del comunismo.
Lenin había comenzado las reformas de las leyes inmediatamente al asumir el poder, cumpliendo sus promesas de justicia para los trabajadores.
Exacto, todo parecía perfecto para aquellos campesinos que habían pasado su vida trabajando para la clase alta, pero ¿qué pasaría con todos aquellos que en su momento habían vivido con privilegios?
Ellos definitivamente no verían la Revolución de Octubre como el resto.
And right she is. Between October 1917 and February 1918, Lenin decided to comply with his promises of replacing the unjust social order with a system of equality by decreeing dozens of policies that transferred much of the country's public and private wealth into the government's hands. One of the most important of these decrees was the Decree on Land, which made the private ownership of land officially illegal. The government passed the lands confiscated from the nobles to the peasant committee, whose job was to divide it. The land would be owned by those who had always worked it, making peasants being the ones providing a way for the noblemen to earn living. Then he seized private upper-class homes and gave the space to workers, who usually forced nobles to live in the smallest rooms. Afterwards, he issued more than 30 decrees nationalizing industries and factories and taking them from their previous owners. Finally, he issued the decree on the separation of church and state, allowing for the seizure of all property belonging to the Russian Orthodox Church.
Now the former people was the one forced to work. Anyone who refused starved. Not to mention that these people were usually given the worst and most degrading tasks. Suddenly, those who had always been privileged had to abandon their homeland and move to either Western Europe, America, or small cities in the south of Russia where Bolshevik authority hadn't yet reached. People from lower classes started gaining trust in Lenin and his way of running Russia, as well as feeling pleased with the idea that now nobles had to work for them to be able to live at those cities.
Here's where we will stay for today. Thank you very much for being with us, and we hope we were able to help you understand more about the great story of the Russian Revolution.